Like I literally had a moment like 2 weeks ago where I found out that a bunch of guys were at the church doing something, and I was like, what are they doing? And then they're like, hey, we spent this and this, and don't worry, we're paying for it. And essentially every wire that was in our church, they paid to hide them. So they literally just like bought this, that, whatever. They ran snakes, whatever, because they wanted to hide every wire in the place. And they made the decision to do that.
That's cool.
Good for them.
Bro, I wasn't a part of it.
Yeah.
I didn't say, but they understood the vision of like,
Yeah.
hey, we don't want loose wires hanging around. Like we don't want people to see blemishes. Like we want to create an atmosphere of excellence, you know? And so if the wires are just hanging around, like, what does that say about us? What does it say about how we treat God and like all that stuff? So like, we've got that from, we're going to do it, So they're spending their own money, their own time, their own efforts to make this thing happen. It's just super cool.
I think the first thing I think about there is like, leadership comes in tiers.
Yeah.
And ultimately, like, so if you're like leading the church or there, but then this ability, I think, for good leaders, and I'd be interested to ask this as a follow-up question too, talk about good leadership, but it's about the people that you have under you, that you empower, your subordinate leaders. Because somebody in that group of guys that gets everybody together, there are some leaders in that group that are bringing people together.
Absolutely.
And having people come along. So like, you've talked about leadership several times now. You brought it up. What have you learned? What do you think, like, asking like the qualities of a good leader?
Yeah.
And like, where do you go to find them? Like, are you reading about leadership, or how are you kind of like?
Yeah. All right. Remember both those questions. Sure. Ask me the first one. Remember the second one. What's the first question?
Oh, no.
I'm really bad at that. So like, where do I go to for leadership? That's the second one. What's the first one?
And just kind of like
good qualities of leadership.
Like you define like what for you, like
good quality. I mean, dude, what I would have said at 21, what I would have said at 25, what I would have said at 30, what I would have said now is like all vastly different. Because like when I was young 20s, like in ministry, I knew it all. Do you know what I mean? Like it's like there's and like that's back when like I was like, leadership to me was listening to Judah Smith on a cassette tape. You know what I mean? Like that's like, that was like leadership back then. You know what I mean? And like, just what's it called? Next Generation Leader by Andy Stanley. I suggest that anybody, no matter where you are, ministry or not, read that book once a year. It is a game changer in how you view leadership. And that was obviously a huge thing from that. But a big thing for like, what do I feel is a good leader? Well, the things that I've experienced and processed is a lot of like, oh, this is probably not what a good leader is. I've had many moments of that where I could be, I can be a good leader. So like the way to become a good leader is to fail. Like that's probably the biggest thing, is somebody that is okay with failing and willing to accept those failures and process through those failures and admit that you're wrong. I think that any leader that is unwilling to admit that they're wrong or that they fell short, I think is very, very it's sad, And so I've had many moments where I've like come to, those that are, lack of a better term, underneath me. And I've just had to say, hey, I missed it. Hey, I did it this way, but I shouldn't have done. Hey, I should have listened to you there. Or hey, hey, we had a little spat, and at the end of the day, what I decided is what we decided. Do you know what I mean? And so I do want to still come back to you and acknowledge that I heard what you said, but this is why I still went with my decision.